Welcome to the unknown, a place where ghosts, cryptids, and extraterrestrials are sought. This is where you'll find answers to questions about what lurks in the dark. This is Periscope Uncensored.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez, and riding shotgun this evening is the hyper in my hyperdrive, Mr. Joe White.
How you doing, everybody?
Hey, we have got a great show coming up for you tonight. Here, after we go to our first commercial of the evening, we're going to have Rick Pedersen from S.P.I.R.I.T BC on the line with us. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that he's been up to since he was on the show about 6 years ago. And we'll be we're really excited to have him back on the show and find out exactly what's new in the world of Mr. Pedersen. And everything that's going on with his organization. But Joe, what's going on in the paranormal world out where you are?
Same stuff.
Yeah.
It's you're still seeing the shills, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been relatively quiet, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. And you'll have to forgive me, I'm multitasking, and because we just got a message from our guest this evening, and we're trying to get one little logistical issue ironed out. And that's what happens when you're dealing with people overseas. Sometimes you've got a little logistical hiccup, and so we've just got that ironed out, and so I'm going to get this information over to our producer so that she can do things on her end, and I'm really excited to talk to him tonight. Though, have you, Joe? Have you heard of Mr. Pedersen? Do you remember when he was a guest all those years ago on the show?
I do not, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, I only started listening to the show maybe 5 years ago. So that was a little bit before my time.
Okay.
I wish I could be more versed in Mr. Pedersen.
Well, Mr. Pedersen is a psychic medium. He is a paranormal investigator. He is a fantastic guy. His organization, S.P.I.R.I.T BC, has been around for a very long time, and he's a great guy to talk to, and again, sorry, I'm multitasking here, folks. That's what happens when everything goes on last minute, right before the show. But S.P.I.R.I.T BC, S.P.I.R.I.T is an acronym, actually, and I don't know if you were aware of that or not. But S.P.I.R.I.T and BC, of course, stands for British Columbia. But S.P.I.R.I.T is the Society of Paranormal Incident Research Investigation Team. So S.P.I.R.I.T. And you can find them on Facebook at S.P.I.R.I.T BC, or you can find them on their website, spiritbc.net. And again, they're out of British Columbia, and you can learn more about tonight's guest and his organization by checking that out. But in the meantime, for anybody listening via one of our internet affiliates, we encourage you to come on over to WBHM Digital Broadcasting to participate in our fully interactive chat room and talk with like-minded and sometimes not so like-minded individuals. You never know what's going to be said in chat. And if you are listening via a mobile device, we encourage you to use the Spreaker link. And there is a chat room over in Spreaker as well. I am not in the Spreaker chat, but our producer is. So if you have questions for us or for the guest, you are more than welcome to post them in either the WBHM chat room or the Spreaker chat room, and rest assured they will get to us one way or the other. So big exciting things going on in the paranormal world out here in Colorado, though. We have an investigation coming up on Saturday at a location that we've been waiting to get into for a couple of years now. And it was going to happen last month, but then it kind of fell through because of my intense, hectic, busy schedule. But it's going to happen this Saturday, so we're excited about that. And hopefully next Thursday, we'll have some exciting updates to share with you as far as that goes. And, Joe, I know you're aware of this, but I don't think our listeners are. On Sunday, I just finished what I call the 12 Days of Hell, where I was so busy. I goofed, folks. I triple booked myself for 12 days. I had I know, shame on me. I had 3 events going on at the same time for 12 days. And which meant that I was commuting just under 200 miles one way every day. So I would go just under 200 miles one direction, and at the end of the day, I would go just under 200 miles back the other direction. And I talked to my dad the other day, and I said, yeah, I need to get the oil changed in the car. And he goes, already? You just bought that car in January. And I'm like, well, number one, the oil was, last changed on the car in December. So it's been 3 months. And number two, I've put almost 3,000 miles on the car, and 2,000 of that was in the last week. And so my dad had some colorful things to say about how much I'm driving my car, but it had to be done. I goofed and triple booked myself, and Saturday is another day where I goofed and I'm triple booked because I've got something going on Saturday during the day. I've got a pet sitting gig that starts on Saturday, and I've got an investigation on Saturday night. So I am triple booked again on Saturday. I have got to stop doing that. That's killing me. That's killing me.
Yes.
And Kat posted in the chat room, she was slamming. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how I did it either. I don't know how I survived it, without, losing my mind or getting sick or wrecking my car or, because I was driving really early in the morning and sometimes really late at night. And, driving here in Colorado, when the weather is inclement, can be a challenge. And there was some inclement weather during that 12-day stretch. I don't know how I did it. So live and learn.
Woodpecker lips.
That's right. I am tougher than woodpecker lips.
Yeah.
And if you'll bear with me for just a second, I will look up and see who next week's guest is. And then I think we're not doing a show the week after because you and I are both going to be extremely busy that night, getting a project knocked out of the way. Let's see. Next week, if I can get my computer to respond. That's like, why is it my computer does just fine, but as soon as I get on the air, it's like, no, I'm going to go at turtle speed. And I'm not talking Ninja Turtle. I'm talking, like tortoise and the hare kind of turtle.
Yeah, but didn't the tortoise beat the hare?
The tortoise did beat the hare.
Oh, there you go.
So next week, we're going to have Ronnie with Tennessee Paranormal on, and we're going to be learning more about Tennessee Paranormal. We're going to be learning about Ronnie. We're going to be learning about, different aspects of research there. And then I am correct. There is no show on the 18th. So, yay. Our lovely producer, Miss Kat Hobson, will be playing an archive. And Kat wants to know what kind of an investigation we're doing on Saturday, and is it turtly enough for me? The investigation that we're doing on Saturday, is the computer turtly enough for you? Yeah, the computer is definitely turtly enough for me. And the investigation is at a significant historic location here in Western Colorado. I'm not going to divulge it until after we've completed our investigation, just because we don't want any unexpected guests.
Mm-hmm.
The spectral guests can make all the appearances they want, but the living, they can stay home that night. So we are. Go ahead.
If you're gonna ask that question, you're gonna ask it right. You gotta say, "Is it turtle enough for the Turtle Club?"
One more time. How does that go?
I'm all set.
You're all set.
You didn't get it the first time, then that's okay.
It wasn't for me. It was for our listeners.
Yeah, well, they heard it. Listen to the archive.
Outstanding.
It was just a little bit of, was it Dana Carvey from that, what was the name of that movie? Master of Disguise. I think that was the name of the movie.
I don't know that I've ever seen that movie, and I'm a Dana Carvey fan.
He actually he had a costume of a turtle shell, and he went as a turtle.
Okay.
And he talked like the Looney Tunes turtle there that was running, like that ugly buzzard.
Okay.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
When he talks like this. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Kind of like Goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
I was waiting for you to keep going with that, but you decided not to.
Well,
Yeah, well,
I mean, I'm pretty good with voices, but I don't think I'm that good. Some people think I'm good, but maybe some night I'll indulge in my voices. I don't know.
Oh, I think you should. I think it would bring the Uncensored to Periscope Uncensored.
Oh, me?
There was a little Scooby there.
Yeah.
Vern wants to know, Vern says, Goofy, where's Mickey?
Vern is actually Mickey.
Oh. So Vern is Mickey. And folks, if you don't know who we're talking about, Vern is a former guest here on the show, and he's also in the chat room tonight. So hop on over to WBHM-DB.com, and you can interact with, we actually have two past guests in the chat room tonight. We've got Vern and Cuvid in the chat room. And we've also got Sarah and Dara Renee and Kat and myself. And like I said earlier in the show, you never know what's going to be said in the chat room. You never know. So,
hey, Vern. Hey, Cupid. There's the shadows.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, it's relatively quiet in the paranormal world around here. I haven't seen too much happening.
Okay. Well, and that's pretty typical for this time of year. A lot of teams, take the late winter and early springtime, to regroup and, um, focus on research or develop new theories or just, take a little bit of time off.
Yeah.
And so, that's pretty typical for this time of year. But I have to tell you that we have a guest coming up in May, Reverend Sean Whittington. And I recently obtained a copy of his newest book that came out on St. Patrick's Day called God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And we're going to have Reverend Sean on the show in May to discuss the book. But oh my gosh, it's a halfway decent book. I'm impressed. And I'm excited to finish reading it. Totally not what I was expecting. And folks, if you have any interest at all in the really dark side of paranormal investigation, and by dark, I'm talking about, the dreaded D word, being, demons and demonology and spiritual warfare. This is a book you should really check out. Again, it's called God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry by Reverend Sean Patrick Whittington. And we're going to have him as a guest on the show coming up in May. I think it's the first Thursday in May, the 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not going to mess with the computer to bring up the calendar again, just to confirm that.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe that you said it was May 9th.
May 9th? Is it May 9th or May 2nd? I don't remember. Here, let me look. Let's see. Nope, it's May 2nd.
Okay.
And so
there's a book for you there, Q.
Yeah, Q, hop onto Amazon. Look up that book. And while you're at it, grab copies of my books too. I have 6. No shortage of reading.
Yeah.
Speaking of reading, oh my gosh. The vision dilemma that I went through this week. If it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. And Joe, I know you already know what's going on and what happened, but our listeners don't. And, I had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, and my driver's license expired on my birthday. And so I went to renew my driver's license, but they said that because I was over a certain age, and I'm not going to say what that certain age is, but because I'm over a certain age, I had to have my vision checked by a licensed optometrist before they would renew my driver's license. And up in the neck of the woods where I live, it was going to cost between $150 and $175 just for the eye exam. And I went, forget that mess. And so I drove, an hour and a half to the nearest big city and went and got my eyes checked down there, which only cost me $60. And, I even, they determined that I am severely farsighted, and because of my age, my eyes can no longer compensate for my bad vision. So I really need to wear glasses full time. And yeah, I know you're laughing. And so I, spent $60 on the eye exam and another $40 on a pair of glasses, which will be in on Saturday. And went yesterday to get my driver's license. And in Colorado, in order to get your driver's license, you have to stick your head in this little box and take a vision test. And I had all of my paperwork, with me saying that I had my vision tested and that I had ordered glasses and everything. And not only did they not even ask for it, they didn't ask if I had my vision tested within the last 3 years. And they stuck my head in that box, and lo and behold, I passed the vision test without glasses or contacts. And so there's no restriction on my driver's license. So I went through all of that mess, spent $100 essentially for nothing. Well, it wasn't for nothing because I needed the glasses. I needed to have my vision checked anyway. It needed to be done. But, I didn't have to have it in order to renew my driver's license because I passed the vision test anyway. And on that note, it is time for our first break of the evening. But when we come back, we're going to have Rick Pedersen on the line. So stay tuned, folks. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we'll be right back.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy, I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez, and riding shotgun this evening is the man who makes Betty White want to be a ghost, just so he can investigate her, Mr. Joe White.
How you doing? By the way, no relation.
Yeah, that's right. No relation between Joe White and Betty White. Although, wouldn't that be cool?
I wish.
If you could say you were related to the funniest lady in America.
Right?
That would be cool. But we have got a great guest on the line tonight, folks. As I mentioned before the break, he is a very gifted psychic medium. He's got an amazing organization out of British Columbia, and he was a guest on the show about 6 years ago. So it's been a really long time since we've talked to him. Please join us in welcoming back to the show, Mr. Rick Pedersen. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. It's great to speak to you again.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It has been a while. Yeah, lots of cases have been dealt with in the interim, and lots of good stuff for us to talk about here tonight.
Well, when we spoke to you last, we were on a different network, and we've actually gone through a couple of different networks since we talked to you. So for our new listeners who aren't familiar with you and your research and your abilities, why don't you give our listeners a little rundown about you and what you do?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm 51 years old. I've been doing this as far as the paranormal investigation side of things since about 2009 is when I really got actively involved in doing paranormal investigations. I was kind of getting a little bit tired of, I did join up to a local group, and I was kind of tired of the way they were doing things. They basically had the mantra that if they had a psychic involved, nobody could know that a psychic was involved and how a psychic worked and what the psychic was getting. It just seemed very counterintuitive to me. And so I decided to go off and form my own group, Spirit BC. And do things sort of the way that I felt that was the appropriate way to do it. And I have a background. I used to be an auxiliary constable with the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And so I treat my investigations very much the same way as a police file. Basically, there's some screening processes that goes in. We're quite selective on the cases that we handle. There's a screening process as far as the clientele to make sure we know what we're dealing with as far as, is there, in the questionnaire we talk about, is there any sort of alcohol use or drug abuse or anybody with mental health issues? These are all very valid questions, but it's not to be too personal for the client, but it's also we need to know that could explain some of the experiences people are having. And at the same time, what am I taking my team into? Is it going to be a safe environment, et cetera? So, and then as a medium, it's my job to sort of go through and see what's happening as far as energy on the location, and then determine how we're going to handle this. If there is indeed some sort of paranormal activity, then what is going to be the way to resolve the issue? So I've been dealing with that for about 10 years. I've been a medium all of my life, as much as everybody else will tell you. If they're a medium or a psychic, they've had it, basically all their lives. They just learned how to process and how to work with the abilities. So I've been dealing with that ever since I was a child. And basically, I apply that to my everyday life. I apply it to everything that I do in my life is working intuitively and connecting energetically to situations. So for me, when I'm doing my investigative work, I come at things a little bit differently. I like to work quite scientifically first, roll a lot of things out, and then, as I say, go to the walk through the building, find out where I'm sensing activity or energy levels. And then we go into a combination of utilization of equipment plus my abilities as a medium. I also have a very talented team member, Glenn Larson, who he's grown up in a family where his mother is a reverend of a spiritual church and is a very talented medium in her own right. And basically, he's sort of my psychic backup and also lends support as well. As if I'm picking up on something, I'll go, hey, what are you picking up here? What do you think? What do you feel? So it's a really interesting team that we have. Downsides that we've had, people come, people go. As far as members of the team, I try to keep it a little bit tighter. We used to have a larger team, but when you have too many people, I just find it gets a little too complicated. So we've tightened up the numbers and tackle it much more efficient that way. So I hope that answers your question.
Wow. So you guys have downsized a little bit since we talked to you last.
Yeah.
Are you finding that has been overall beneficial for the organization as a whole, or has it been has it added just a little bit of a complication?
Well, obviously, many hands make light work. So, if you're going into doing a full-on investigation where you're setting up equipment and you're setting up, all the different cameras and what have you, it's obviously nice to have more bodies. It makes the process faster and easier. However, it lends complications. I mean, when you start bringing in, at one point, we had a team of about 6 to 8 people, depending. When you start having that many people, you're bringing a lot of energy of each individual into the environment as well. Right. Then you also have the scenario where, as a medium, when I'm tapping into things, I like a very controlled environment and I like it very quiet. And so it can be somewhat challenging because everybody wants to be talking. And even, I don't know if you guys have ever done any kind of meditation, but when you go into a meditative state, something like a whisper sounds like somebody's talking with their full voice. Right. So it's one of those things where, it can be a bit of a distraction when you're trying to get into that sort of, mindset of working as a medium. So I do like having a smaller, tighter team, and when need be, we do have extra people that we do call in if we're going to be doing a big investigation. And thankfully, most of the cases, Glenn and I have had, we've been able to tackle it. Just him and I come at it, and get it done. But we did have one. I sent you folks some pictures. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at those.
Yes.
But that was from an investigation back in November. In the almost 9 years that Glenn has been with me, one of the things that I do love about Glenn is that he's pretty much a rock. Like, he's pretty, stable guy, just right down the middle. He doesn't get sort of prone to emotional swings as far as, oh my God, freaking out or that kind of stuff. Very grounded. Mm-hmm. And when we went to this one investigation, it was in a very, very remote rural location. And we went into it and we're like, oh my goodness, like when we were driving there, there was about a quarter of a mile away from, I'm trying to put this into U.S. terms for you guys for business, about a quarter of a mile away from the house, and you could feel the energy shift. Mm-hmm. And we were like, whoa, like this is significantly feeling like we're moving into something that's pretty heavy here. And we got out of the car, and you could just feel it on the property. And we started going in and talking to the client, did our walkthrough. We picked up on some real heavy negative energy spots. And at one point, we were working with the K2 meter. I use the K2 meter as a visual for people who are there, be it Glenn or others, so they can see when we're getting, a question and then a response via the lights illuminating. So we were having direct contact with whatever it was, some sort of presence, we'll call it. And it was pretty funny because at one point I said to Glenn, I said, I was in the foyer area, and I said, go down the hall towards the bedrooms there and just check on a few things. And he went down the hall, and he came out of the hall, and he's like, holy smokes. He said, there's something down there. He said, I heard breathing like right behind me. And I said, okay, well, let's go check it out. And it was the first and only time I've ever heard him say to me, I really don't want to go back down that hall. And
wow.
Like, okay, so when I've got somebody who's been literally, we'll call it in combat situations with me in some pretty heavy cases, for him to say, I don't want to go back down there. I'm like, okay, hang here. Let me go claim the space. And it was the craziest thing. But I went down the hall. I went into the one bathroom. And as I entered the bathroom, all of a sudden, it literally felt like somebody dumped a bucket of ice water down my back.
Oh, wow.
And over my right shoulder, I don't know if you've ever heard the sound of what a cougar or a puma mountain lion, when they
yes.
roar. It was like that kind of a sound that I heard.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, okay, what do we got going on here? And so I sort of worked to ground myself, expand my energy out, claim the space. And then I came out of the bathroom. And we were standing at in the foyer area. There was the client was with us as well, and at the same time, the three of us looked down the hall, and we saw a pair of glowing eyes that were about 2.5 feet off the ground, and then all of a sudden, these eyes went to being about 6.5 feet off the ground, and then dropped back down to about 2.5, darted left, darted right, and then gone. And the three of us looked at each other and went, did you just see what I just saw? And we're all like, yeah, those eyes. And we're like, okay, yeah, so there's something there. So immediately I grabbed 2 different cameras. One is a full spectrum camera, and the other one was just a regular Samsung digital camera. And went into this one room that I thought was a real heavy room, snapped a couple of pictures back to back. And if you look at the photos, you'll see 2 different angles where there's eyes that are looking in from outside. And they're at one direction, they're looking, and then in the next picture, they're looking over in another direction, sort of towards me. And the interesting thing about it is that I said to Glenn earlier on, I said, it feels like this thing is in the house, and then it goes outside, and then it comes back in the house, and it goes outside. And it was very intense. It was affecting all of our equipment. We had tons of activity happening over the ghost box. If you've ever been in your vehicle and you've had your car radio on and you've driven under high-tension power lines and you hear that static come on?
Right.
That was happening. And you would hear, it would start off very faint, and then basically it would get really loud. And as the sound became louder, the K2 meter and the Gauss meter would just start going nuts. And it was directly, this entity was moving into that space of where the ghost box was. And we did our best. It was pretty funny. There was at one point where what I like to do when I'm doing a clearing is I like to sort of go to the areas that I want to sort of seal off, and I'll energetically create barriers and seal it off. And so I'm sort of, we could call it herding cats, I guess, but, you're sort of corralling them and pushing energy into an area where you want to do your final, we'll call it the battle or the clearing or whatever.
Right.
So we've always done this. We've always had very, very high success ratios doing this. And it was quite interesting because I had the clients sitting in the living room. And I said to Glenn, I said, just have them stay here. I'm going to create, the energy field here. Glenn, I want you to hold it. I'm going to start pushing energy in other areas so we can try and push this off. And what was really wild was that I had created this energy barrier, and the clients were sitting in. And just for fun, we put the K2 meter down beside them. And all of a sudden, and this is inside of that barriered area, the K2 meter starts flashing. And like we're talking full bars going from green to red. And I'm like, what's going on? So, okay, fine. So I moved back in there, and it's all about energy and sort of how you present in a confident manner and sort of claim the space. So I moved in, and the second I moved towards it, it stopped. And so I then grounded. I reasserted the energy, made sure I had that space. I walked away, and I got maybe 10 steps away. Boom, start splashing again. And it did this 3 times where it would do that. I go back, I claim the space, it would stop. And then finally, I admit that I started getting kind of frustrated because I'm like, come on, like, stop messing around like this. And I said, I'm moving in, I'm claiming the space, and the K2 meter just kept flashing. And it was looking at me basically as if going, no, you don't control this. And at that point, I looked at Glenn and I went, okay, we're not dealing with, a regular type of a spirit entity. We're dealing with something that's far more powerful, quite honestly. And multiple people had witnessed what we had seen as far as earlier in the day, the homeowners had somebody stop by, and they said they saw something large in the window. It almost looked like as if you would see like a dog would come up and put its paws on the windowsill.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it becomes the size of a man, and then back down, and then gone. And so it really sort of coincided with what we had witnessed there as well, with these eyes going up and then down and then gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically looked at each other and we went, okay, let's keep working for a little bit, see what happens. And we were doing everything that we ordinarily would, and just wasn't having an impact. And through my psychic ability, I connected with my spirit guide, and I'm like, what's going on here? And the first thing that he said to me was skinwalker, shapeshifter.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, okay, this is something that I've never dealt with before. And I think, one of the things that everybody needs to sort of keep in mind when you're doing this kind of work is that you have to keep ego out of it.
Right.
And you can't be going, no, I can deal with this. There's times and places where you're going to encounter something where you're going, this is outside of my bailiwick, and I need to pursue this from a different angle. So I actually had contacted friends of mine that are First Nations, and I guess you would refer to them as Native Americans. Called person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and basically, I know of a shaman, and I said, "Here's what I experienced. What do you think?" And it's a skinwalker shapeshifter. And I'm like, okay. So it all sort of correlated, and but the problem was that basically what we were dealing with was the female partner that was living at the house. She was the one who was sensitive and very, very sensitive, very sensitive. She was picking up on all this stuff. And
Okay.
It was scaring the daylights out of her. Where the boyfriend was much more agnostic about it, and really just, he was kind of going through the motions more for her having us there. And it was kind of funny because at one point, when all the equipment was just going bonkers, and I'm like, listen, I said, look what's going on here. We need to look to step up our game on how we're going to come at this, because what we're doing isn't working. And so the thing was that he looked right at me and said, I don't believe in equipment. I don't trust it. And to which I would say to anybody is that, it's good to be skeptical. It's good to be wanting to find out, is there any other possible explanations? But on the flip side, if you were to go to a mechanic and they hook up, the computer to the car and they go, okay, it's pulling this code, this is what's wrong with it. And then looking at it and going, yeah, but I don't trust the equipment. Okay, but you also have to trust the expert that's telling you this is what's going on in conjunction with the equipment. And so what ended up happening, unfortunately, is that basically they chose to not pursue it any further. And we were not called back. And I've left in the court of the people, if they want to seek help, then we have other people that we can bring on to do so. But
Right. Wow, crazy. Well, on that note, it is time for our next break of the evening. But when we come back, we're going to have more with Rick Pedersen. So stay tuned, folks. You are listening to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez. And of course, riding in the co-pilot seat this evening is the cream in my coffee, the twizzle in my martini, Mr. Joe White.
How you doing, everybody?
And Joe, we were talking to Rick before the break, about how he had a client that was, just like, yeah, I don't trust your equipment. And one thing that we discussed while we were at the break is that's actually pretty opposite of the norm, because most people tend to rely a little too heavily on equipment. And so,
I agree.
yeah, so for him to have had that experience, where it's like, yeah, no, I don't trust your equipment. That's pretty crazy. That goes against the norm.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So we have got a great guest on the line this evening, folks. We've got psychic medium and paranormal investigator Rick Pedersen. He is the founder of Spirit BC out of British Columbia. And again, you can find out more about his organization by going to their website, spiritbc.net, or you can find them on Facebook at Spirit BC. So please join us in welcoming Mr. Rick Pedersen back to the show.
thanks, guys.
And, wow, that is, like we were just discussing, that is a crazy experience where you actually had a client that says, I don't trust your equipment. I could understand if they were saying, I don't trust what your medium or your intuitive is saying, but for a client to say, yeah, no, I don't trust your equipment, that's really outside the norm. And
it was pretty funny, and not funny necessarily from a humorous perspective, but just kind of bizarre to me, because it was kind of a scenario where you're going, you see it happening, like it's right in front of you. You can see the interaction that's happening. You can hear it happening over the radio. And it's not just me saying, oh, this is what I'm getting, right?
right.
And that's as well why I really do like the validation aspect of the equipment. As you were talking about, right? It's more of a validation thing. Like,
Right.
for me, I don't need the equipment to connect or communicate. It's just an accessory, we'll call it, that basically enables those around me to really understand in a better way what's going on. But yeah, it was quite interesting. And you know what? I have to say, out of all the many, 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 many investigations we've done, that's the only one that we've ever had to walk away from and not have resolution. And it was somewhat frustrating, because we really want to help our clients out. But as I say, there's times where you have to be able to say, you know what? Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. And this was outside of my knowledge and experience. Hence the term paranormal,
Right.
And so we had to default to looking for some other help, but people have to be wanting the help, not just us putting it on them.
Absolutely. And so you touched a little bit on client follow through. How do you handle the client follow through when you've gone through and you've determined that yes, there is potential paranormal activity at a location? How do you handle that with the clients? Do you attempt in-house resolution, or is it in-house resolution? Do you farm it out to somebody else, or how do you guys handle that?
No, you know what? Because I'll tell you this, it really comes down to too many chefs spoil the broth. And, I'm of the mindset that people can be very easily influenced.
Yes.
Okay. And especially somebody that's been through, and we're going to call it a traumatic event. I mean, when you've got, my whole theory about your home is that your home is where you go to retreat from the world. It's where you go to raise your family, sleep, and find harmony. And when it's not in that state, it becomes very stressful. And so basically, people want it to be in a certain vibration. They want it to feel, comfortable. And so my whole worry is that when you get other people coming in that may go, oh yeah, but I still feel such and such. And it's like, whoa. Just planting that seed can absolutely destabilize where we've got the client to.
Oh, definitely.
And so I basically, I tell my clients that, this is where you're at. And I'm going to give you an example, and I think this is very important for people to remember, is if you have light-colored carpets in your house and you don't take your shoes off every time you come in, it's going to get dirty. And so you call in, ABC Carpet Cleaning Company. They come in, they clean the carpets, and 2 weeks later, your carpets are dirty again because you're not taking your shoes off. Is it the carpet cleaner's fault? No. It's your fault because you're not minding your home and how you're treating it. And so I tell people that we have to be mindful about everything we do. What are we bringing into our home? What is our accountability? What is our responsibility for what is happening in our home? So, for example, you'll never find in my house antiques. It's just, no, right? And if there is something that somebody insists upon bringing into the house, then you have to do a very good, thorough staging of it to make sure that there's no attachments. And even, for example, just silly stuff like going into a thrift store and bringing stuff home. People don't think twice about it, but it's like, you don't know what energetic attachment is with that. And so, I counsel people is that if you're not doing proper energetic cleansing, you're going to attract things in your home. In our experience, I'd be curious to ask this of you and also your listeners, how many of you that do paranormal investigation work have found that quite often homes that are in a very disorganized, chaotic state where they're not even to the hoarder stage, but where they're really messy and cluttered, are having paranormal activity. I have found that to be the case in a lot of our investigations, where if people are not tending to how their place is, that's going to attract stuff.
Interesting. That makes me want to clean my house.
But it has to do with, we've all heard of feng shui, right?
Right.
And I've explained to people is that if you have your house in a very chaotic state, the energy doesn't flow. And one of the things for me as a medium, I remove all religious aspects of what I do. Because to me, religion is man-made. This is just my personal beliefs. But religion is man-made, and it's that dogma and whatever that we're sort of, indoctrinated with, where I believe that it's all about energy. And so I subscribe to Einstein's theory of energy. Energy can be either created or destroyed. It really changes from one form to another. And so we have to be very mindful that, we have to allow energy to flow in our house. That's why the whole thing with feng shui, you have to treat it kind of like your cardiovascular system. It has to be able to flow and has to breathe. If it's blocked, then you can get buildups of energy, etc. And when you get this negative block happening is when you can draw in negative energies, or even we'll call it entities or spirits or whatever.
That's a really interesting take on it. That's not something I had even thought about or considered. So essentially the premise behind this theory is that, by having the more peaceful, decluttered living space, that puts you in a better mindset and less likely to attract the potential spiritual invaders, if you will. Is that am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Yeah, just think about when you're trying to get into that sort of meditation and Zen state, right? Where you're trying to find that balance, where you're finding the grounding and able to feel centered. Mm-hmm. If you were to try and do that in an area that is cluttered and chaotic, it's very hard for you. Like, you think about it, if you're in something where you can hardly move and you're trying to push stuff away and you're trying to find that space, well, why do we need space? If it's not touching me, theoretically, let's look at it this way. If I sit down on the floor And as long as I have 2 inches of separation from my body, nothing's touching me. But do I feel really comfortable in that spot? I usually want to push stuff away because it's our energy fields. It's our own energy that we're, our aura or auric energy, et cetera, that we want to have that space for it to be able to expand and contract and move. And the same thing happens in our homes is that, the energy has to flow. So we have to be very, very mindful. And so I tell clients is that, if you're not doing what I call your energetic hygiene, and releasing all the day's junk and basically taking your shoes off at your front door kind of a thing, you're dragging that all into the house with you. And so the more that you build up this negativity, and I've experienced it multiple times where we've gone to places where there's very increased levels of paranormal activity, and you look around and you go, yep, right? Like, look at this room, and you're just, garbage pits, right? Stuff's just tossed around. It's not in any kind of order.
Interesting. That is that's definitely a different way to look at it. And again, I can't say that I have ever taken that approach to this, and I've been doing this for, I've been chasing things that go bump in the night for over 20 years now. And so is that something that you recommend to the clients? Do you delicately say, if you clean your house, this might go away, or?
Well, yeah, and here's my card for Molly Maid, right? You know what? It is a delicate subject to have to broach with somebody, but I view it from the perspective of you've brought me in as a professional to help you with a problem, and it's no different than going to if you're overweight and you're going to a cardiologist because you're having some heart issues, whatever, and they go, look, you got to drop 50 pounds, you got to stop eating at the drive-thru, you got to start exercising. There's things that have to happen for it to be successful, or you deal with the consequences. Do we have time for a quick story?
We've got 3 minutes before our next break.
Okay, I'll tease you with a real quick story of basically there was an investigation we did a few years back. And when we went to the place, the homeowner, she was a lady in her 60s, her mother was like 90 at the time, and they had, I think at the time, they had about 8 cats. And I'm personally allergic to cats, so I said, if you can just put the cats somewhere contained, and then we'll deal with it. Well, we ended up doing a clearing in this place, and one of the rooms was just as I described, where the bedroom was packed front to back, top to bottom, not stacked. It looked like people had just taken stuff and thrown it into a pile until the pile became the room. And I said, this is indicative of sort of how the house was starting to look. And I said, you've got to clear this out. You're on the path to becoming a hoarder. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you also have to factor in that's a mental health issue. That's a mental state. Right. And so there's other factors to come into this. So basically, we did the clearing, and it's actually on our YouTube channel. There's some very good footage of voice box, like spirit box interactions and whatever. Did the clearing. I ended up getting a call back about a year and a half later, and she said it's back. And I'm like, well, I highly doubt it's back, but let's take a look. I went to her place, and what went from having 8 cats was now like 15 or 20 cats. The house literally had cat vomit and cat droppings everywhere. The woman was feeding the cats by just throwing the food all over the floor. And there's all this chaos. And I said, well, there's no spirit here. This is just energy, and it's you not being well, right? And I can't help that. There's, I can point you in the direction to get help, but I can't be the one to facilitate that, right? So it's amazing how things can be compounded by that.
Wow. That's insane. And on that note, it is time for our top of the hour break. But when we come back, we're going to have more with Mr. Rick Pedersen. So stay tuned, folks. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we will be right back after this message from NPR. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez, and at the helm with me this evening is the Adam to my Barbara Maitland, Mr. Joe White.
How you doing, everybody?
And see, children of the 80s and 90s will know who Adam and Barbara Maitland were. I don't know that the younger generation will get that one, but anybody that's watched
Yeah.
Beetlejuice will get it.
Right?
So we are having a great time this evening talking to our guest, Mr. Rick Pedersen from Spirit BC out of Canada. You know,
How's it going,
and we've been talking a little bit about the necessity to keep a tidy house in order to bring about a little more positive energy and less likely to have what people perceive to be spirit interaction just by having a little bit tidier house. And during the break, Rick, you were saying that you had another investigation story along those lines.
Yeah, it's thank you. There was another one that was interesting. It was out on another rural property. It was a farm, and the owner. It was pretty ironic how this all went down. But I got a call that she needed to have an investigation done. There was all kinds of activity happening in the place, and she said, "I'm heading to Vegas for the week." She said, "So I'm going to leave the keys with my son, and he'll let you in, and then you deal with it." And I was kind of chuckling because it was almost made you feel like as if you're like a contractor coming in to do something while the homeowner's away.
Right.
And but I remember we arrived to the home, and the son came, got the keys, and he went to take us into it. And the woman had actually said she was actually having renovations done, and I'll never forget this. Like we went in the house and we were like, oh, good Lord, like, what's going on in here? And there was major issues with, like, we'll call it tidiness.
Okay.
You could not see the kids' counters at all. Like, at all. Like, they were just buried. The person had cooked food in the frying pan and left that on the stove top with all kinds of other stuff. And I'm like, you're gone away for a week and you leave this on your stove. Okay. And the craziest thing was that we went through the whole place and we're like, yeah, like the place is full of energy and stuff going on. But and I remember we went to go check out the bedrooms, and her bedroom was literally, she had all of her clothes on the floor. And, like, we're talking, like, 1.5 feet deep. Like, you couldn't, like, walk. You were stepping on top of clothes and stuff. And I just looked at Glenn, and I'm like, we can't do anything here. This is ridiculous. Like, there's way too much chaos in this place. Like, I mean, it's literally going to be like spitting in the wind. And for me, my whole thing is that if the client wants to work with me, I'm there to work with you. But I'm not here to do everything for you. It has to be a shared effort. And
Right.
And so the most ironic part was we went down to the basement and all you could smell was cats. And the ironic thing was the one room that she kept the cats in was clean as a whistle. Apart from smelling litter box smell, the room, there was nothing in the room. It was empty. And I'm like, okay, so like the cats get, a clean room, but the zone that you're living in is completely chaos, right? And so I said to the son, I said, look, no offense, but I said, I understand she's having some renovations done. You can see there was some areas where there was a little bit of work being done, but I said, this place needs to get literally gutted out and cleared, okay? Like as far as all the chaos and the clutter. I said, then call us back and we'll come in and then we can deal with this. And so he was totally understanding, and it was kind of funny. We had showed up a little bit before some other team members of ours that were coming out, and Glenn and I were sitting in my car, and I'm not exaggerating in the least. We were sitting in my car. It's dark out, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen a shadow person, but a shadow person walked right past my door, past the front of the car, and kept on going. And it was a really intense experience to see. And I have my theories about shadow people. I'm a firm believer that they're sort of in between two dimensions. So they're not fully in phase with one or the other. They're sort of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right.
And I saw that and I'm like, yeah, well, it kind of stands to reason why they're attracted to this property. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. But it was pretty interesting. And I remember that night basically emailing the client, and I said, look, here's what we've come across. This is how we have to have it to deal with it, etc. When you get back from your trip and get the place organized, then please have us in, and then we can deal with this for you. And it was kind of funny because I don't think she appreciated the email that we didn't do anything, and we got a reply of one word, and that was sorry, and then a period, and that was it. And we never heard anything back, but it was one of those things where it's like, well, the place is just rife with energy and issues.
Right.
Where do you start? Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have an overwhelming urge to clean my house.
And my best, the thing that I would say to you guys, because you're very active investigators, pay attention to this going forward and see what you think. See if what I'm talking about correlates with activity that's happening in the place. Right? I think you'll be going, oh my goodness, I never really noticed that before. Until you now connect the dots.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. And and definitely see if there is a correlation, because again, it is about energy, regardless. And, if the energy isn't conducive to, the living environment, if you will, then it can attract, negative feelings at the very least, which can cause people to think, that maybe there's something supernatural going on in their house. Makes perfect sense.
And if you think about, go back to energy for a second. Like for me, everything ties into, even like Nikola Tesla. I mean, Tesla said, the secrets to the universe is all about frequency, right? And for me, it stands to reason if you think about words. Words are energetic, and so you can say, like, from a perspective of, cussing, for example, you go, oh, no, that's bad. And I go, well, yeah, obviously you have to use appropriate verbiage when, in mixed company or et cetera settings, right?
Right.
And so the thing is that, but how much power do you give the word? Because, for example, if I was to say, oh, damn it, after this is over, I have to go and, put on some dinner or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or in a conversation, if I'm angry with you and I go, damn you, right? Well, it's the same word, damn and damn, but it's the intention and the vibration and the energy behind it is what shifts.
Right.
So as a medium, it all lines up for me as far as it's all about that intention, frequency, vibration, harmonics, waves. It all makes direct relation to what we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration. This is something that we discuss on the show pretty frequently. When you're in an investigation situation, how so many people have been led to believe that using profanity and aggression in investigation situations is appropriate. They've been led to believe that because that's what they are viewing on television. And, most people don't realize just how dangerous or potentially dangerous that can be. It's like they see it on TV, and so they're led to believe that is acceptable behavior in a potentially paranormal situation. And so then they go out and they try to emulate what they have, what they've seen on television. And, they wonder why they get, negative interaction or no interaction. And so it's like, well, think of the energy that you were putting out, or the attitude that you were taking, or, the approach that you were taking, not necessarily conducive to a successful investigation. And
yeah, but sorry, the interesting thing is that for me, I'm not, too big for my britches to say that every day is an opportunity to learn something. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, there's in Surrey, BC. There's they have a museum. It's all been redone. It's a beautiful little museum, and it's all stuff pertinent to the city of Surrey. And so I went in there, and I was looking around, and I'm looking at this one image, and over to my left, probably about 15, 20 feet away, was this modified old television set, but it was like a radio kind of a thing. And I literally saw an energy distortion field manifest right in front of it. And it literally, I'm going, okay, something's coming through, right? There was something coming through. And I freely admit a lot of times, and I think this comes down to also having been involved in policing or whatever, you're aware of your surroundings, and then you also are on guard, right? So, when I'm in a scenario, for example, I mean, a museum, you're going to have a blast tomorrow. Museums is like shooting fish in a barrel, okay? If you don't have activity going on, I don't know what kind of museum it is. But the thing is that when I go into those things, I never know, am I going to be dealing with positive spirit or negative spirit? I don't know what I'm dealing with. Right. So I sort of go into that a little bit of a defensive zone. It's like, okay. And so when that manifested, I literally thought, okay, let's move over there, claim the space. What's going on? And I did. And I freely admitted that I didn't do it in a manner of going over there in an aggressive manner, like, I'm going to tear you apart. It wasn't like that. It was literally going into the space and going, I claim this space. What's going on? What's coming out that's trying to communicate with me? But in a manner of me saying it from the perspective of almost like a bit of a challenge, okay?
Right.
And it completely dissipated and went away. And in that moment, my spirit guide came through to me and taught me a lesson, and that was softer. You don't always need to come at it hard. Softer. Because that potentially was something that was wanting to communicate, maybe seeking help, maybe just wanting to say hello. But when you move into it in a strong, I don't even like the term aggressive manner, but in a strong, dominant manner, then what you do is you create that energy that something could be fearful of you if you're posing what they deem as a threat.
Right.
So it was a fantastic learning opportunity for me, because I kind of went, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? I did kind of move into that in that manner. I do need to scale it down a couple notches. I don't need to be quite as on guard as I was. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And, you had the forethought, though, to say, okay, maybe this isn't the best approach. Maybe this isn't the best course of action. And a lot of that is because you are in touch and in tune with your spirit guides. And they said, hey, whoa, softer. And you were able to listen and acknowledge. But again, like I mentioned, so many people, they see this negative behavior on television and they think that is acceptable, and they go out and they try to emulate. And then, we as investigators, we get called in going, we had this group of people, who came in and, and it just stirred things up and made it worse. And
yeah, you know what? My position on it is it depends upon the team, first of all. I have encountered in many cases where teams, and it's not meant to slag on teams by any means, but where it's a group of people get together, they want to do investigations because they're curious. They want to experience the other side or the paranormal or whatever. And so they go into these cases to do it. And I refer to it as a scratch and sniff book. Okay? You scratch it, you sniff it, you go, no, I don't smell anything. Or you scratch it, you sniff it, go, oh yeah, I smell that. Okay, so you went in, you scratched and sniffed, you stirred it up, and then you go to the client, yeah, you got a ghost, or you got this, or whatever.
Right.
Now what? And this is why I say I think that pretty much every team should do some really good research and find a very competent medium who knows what they're doing, is not full of ego, and can go in there and actually resolve the issue or say, no, this is outside of what we can do here, guys. We're dealing with something else, versus just going in with technical gear. Because realistically, how does it resolve things for your clients? And in the cases that you're talking about, where people are going in and doing the provocation approach, all they're really doing is stirring stuff up. And then when they leave, they get to go home, and the client has to stay there, right?
Right.
And that's a real problem. And again, going back to the policing aspect of things, the thing that I learned very early on doing that was, if you were, let's say, for example, that you're involved in some sort of a dispute or whatever. If I come over to you and I go, all right, man, what's going on here? Give me your ID. Just tell me what happened. And I'm really curt with you, and I'm abrasive or whatever. You're going to get defensive, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to be thinking that I'm a jerk, and you're not really going to want to cooperate. Mm-hmm. Or I could come into you and go, hey, how's it going? So what's going on? I understand there's been a little bit of a dust-up, so, let's hear your side of the story. And while you're telling me that, do you mind just giving me your ID so I can make some notes, and let's hear what's going on? It's always easier to come at it from a little bit softer approach, and then if you have to, heat things up, versus heating things up and trying to bring it down afterwards.
Right.
And so the people who don't really understand that, or they don't practice that, they just, as you say, it's that sort of, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to provoke. Well, okay, so you provoked it, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, it is time for our next break. But when we come back, we'll find out what Joe was about to say, and we'll have our final segment with Rick. So stay tuned. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez, and of course at the helm with me this evening is the keymaster to my gatekeeper, Mr. Joe White.
Hey, how you doing?
You're not laughing at my intros tonight. What the heck? I went to a lot of trouble to get, to come up with these intros. I even had help. And
I know you had help.
and you're not laughing at them tonight. You laughed at them last week. So I don't understand. Did you break your funny bone?
No, I got some personal stuff going on.
Okay. I understand. Before we went to break, though, we were talking with our guest, Rick Pedersen from Spirit BC, and you had a comment about what we were discussing. So I guess we'll just jump right back into it and have you go ahead with your comment then.
Well, I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but like what Rick was just saying is that about the, tone it down, don't go be aggressive when you're going in, because as investigators, we end up leaving, and then the client is stuck with the bulk of the aftermath, so to speak. It's just a matter of respect. That's all that it is.
Mm-hmm.
You treat them like as if they were. I mean, most spirits, they were alive at one time. Like if you come off with an attitude towards, say, like with you, Clarissa, if I come off with an attitude towards you, are you going to want to talk to me?
No, I'll bite your head off.
Well, see. And that's with any human being, right?
Right.
So why would spirits be any different?
No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. And kindness brings on kindness. Go ahead.
Can I add to that? The interesting point you said, Joe, as well, is you said about it being any human being. The thing that I want to add to that is what we have to be open to is that not everything we deal with as investigators is human. There are, mainstream physicists talking about multiverse and basically the parallel dimensions, etc. And so, we potentially are dealing with things that aren't human. I know I've had interactions with things that are not of a human origin. And if you think about it for a second, just, I've done a lot of dog training over the years. If you've got a dog and you're trying to train this dog, but you come at it really aggressively, the dog's going to become fearful, right? You got to come at it from a softer approach, and it's more about praise and whatever to draw that in. And again, you can always flip the switch to go into a more aggressive stance when you're dealing with stuff. It's just easier to do it that way versus, conversely the other.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rick, you said you had another case story that you wanted to share with us, and we've got about 20 minutes, well, a little less than 20 minutes left before we say goodnight to you. So let's hear about that one.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so this one happened a couple of years ago, and this was a very interesting investigation. It was actually a male client who had reached out to me for an actual reading, a psychic reading. And, typically I find that most of my clients are probably 98, 99% female. So I always welcome when a male is open to tapping into their sensitive side or tapping into, what's going on spiritually around them. Mm-hmm. And so I did this reading for this person, and it was quite interesting because everything that I connected in the session, he was just going, wow, okay, this is the guy. And so he said to me, okay, the reading was spot on, everything that I'm going through, et cetera, you just validated that you're the person I need to see. And he said, I've been going through absolute hell for the last 2 years, he said, where it started in my other home. He said, I actually got attacked in my sleep. And what had happened, he literally woke up one night. He'd been having all kinds of activity happening in the house and didn't know what was going on. And he woke up where he was beautifully rigid in bed, and he was propped up on his forearms, okay? And he said literally he felt something like essentially grab him by the face and snap his neck backwards.
Oh, my gosh.
Actually broke his neck and ended up having to 911 and go to the emergency, and they ended up having to do emergency surgery on him. And I'd seen he had kept a copy of the X-ray and showed that his spinal cord was almost like a U-shaped, where it was just bent right over. And it was interesting because he'd mentioned the surgeon's name, who I actually know of the surgeon, very, very competent, reputable neurosurgeon. And basically, the surgeon, after he come out of post-op and was recovering, he said, what happened to you? He said, motorcycle accident? Were you diving, to a pool? What happened? He goes, no. He said, I woke up in bed like this. And the doctor actually was like, BS. I don't believe it. And he goes, well, I have no reason to lie about this. He said, I woke up and this is what I experienced. And the guy's like, well, that's almost impossible to have. He said, the amount of energy that would have to happen to bend your neck over backwards, you couldn't even get yourself. So basically, he dealt with this and had to recover, and then landed up moving to another home quite a few miles away, and the activity started happening there. So then he was frantic. He needed help. He called us in, and we started doing our investigation. And this was, a very wild case where we actually knew we were dealing with non-human entities. And the activity that we had happening was just off the chain. And there's video that I have that I actually have not even released to the public because I actually think it's just so bizarre. Even when I watch the video of the stuff that's going on, I go like, I can't release this because it's just too intense and too crazy that the average person who doesn't really understand it would just go like, what is going on there? But I mean, you can actually see where we were corralling this entity and pushing energetically. And Glenn's got the K2 meter, and he's about 3 feet in front of me, and you can see the light bars going full bars. And one of the things, I don't know if, I'm sure you guys do this as well, but when I'm doing any of this major kind of work, we actually kill the main power breaker. So there's no juice in the house at all. And we also make sure that we turn off cell phones, et cetera. So there's absolutely no energy sources happening within the house.
Right.
So it's not as though, we're getting, Wi-Fi frequencies, et cetera. There's none of that. And you can see that basically Glenn would take this meter and he'd move from being 3 feet away from me to about 5 feet, and it would stop, come back to the 3 feet in front of me, and it's going again. And basically, I'm moving forward, and I'm energetically pushing, and basically corralling this entity, and then creating a space where I'm going to do we can't call it a crossing over, because to me that's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
And so there comes a point where it's just, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay in here.
Right.
so I'm getting it out of the house and off the property, kind of a thing. And it was one of those things where there was multiple entities. And so we thought we cleared it successfully the first night, because we actually had all this energy happening stuff. There was one video that's on our YouTube channel where you'll see an orb track right across the screen, and it goes right to my left arm. And you'll see, if you watch carefully, you'll see all of a sudden I buckle in pain, where the pain becomes just excruciating, and it's attacking me. So I've had lots of different things, come at me. I've been slapped. I've been pushed. All these different things happen on investigations. It was fascinating, this case. We actually ended up having to go back 3 times to successfully clear everything out of there for him.
Oh, wow.
And each time, I'll tell you, it was a marathon workout. I was just spent by the end of it all. But this fellow was actually had his neck broken, which was extremely intense, and it correlated with what we were dealing with on site, how intense these things were and aggressive they were.
Wow, that is insane. You hear of people, pretty frequently, reporting, being scratched or touched or bitten or what have you. But, to have their neck broken.
Yeah, and this is why, I want to caution, the listeners and investigators as well, is that this stuff can get real fast. And, you have to be prepared to know how to protect yourself, know what your limitations are, and not go in there with, false, sort of machismo and going, I can deal with any of this stuff, because it can be very dangerous, and you got to know what you're up against.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That is not something I had ever heard of before. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was just going to bring up real quick is that Carissa's team and my team, when I had one, we investigated S.P.I.R.I.T.S mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on the stairwell. There's about 6 steps. And I went down those stairs. And a week later, a bruise showed up on my arm, and I sent Clarissa the picture, and it appears to be a handprint around my right forearm.
Right, and by saying he went down the stairs, I mean he literally went down the stairs.
Oh, okay, like you fell down the stairs, like it.
Yeah.
What you're saying. Okay. Yeah,
the data that was collected, it's all gearing towards. It could be wrong. It could be just fell, but the way that bruise was on my arm, because I went down on my left side, but my right arm was bruised. Something grabbed me around the right forearm and pulled me off those stairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not surprised. There was a place that I filmed this pilot for a TV show, back in 2012, and when we went there, I'd already been to this location. It was a very old home that was turned into an art gallery museum, and the energy there was very dark, very, very dark. There was a nasty entity in there, and the one of the times that I went there, I was standing at the top of the stairs, and I was doing some photography just to see if I could get some orbs or whatever. I'm standing with my arms extended, snapping pictures, and literally, my wife was about 10 feet away from me, and something came up and just drilled me between the shoulder blades and knocked me down the stairs. And I make the joke that I would have looked like Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance. My feet were doing the river dance as I'm trying to catch up to my body as I'm going down these stairs.
Right.
And I caught myself probably about 6 steps down before, thankfully I caught myself. But yeah, you can get all kinds of things happening where they can do things to you, and you got to be ready for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was not ready for that at all. And be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't aware of how powerful this they can be.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was always thought that it was, they can't physically harm you that way. I mean, I knew about the scratches, and I've had scratches and all that stuff, but I didn't realize that, like the story what you said with the guy with the broken neck and me being pulled off the stairs. I just didn't realize that it was that they could be that powerful. But I know better now.
And that's why as well, I also am a firm, sort of when we're at locations, I always look for hazards. So, I tell people if there's stairs, like you're not being careless on the stairs. Like, you're up the stairs, you're down the stairs, you're not hanging around on the stairs, you're not doing anything that's putting you in a precarious way. Because, it just takes one misstep and you got a major problem, right?
Definitely. So, Rick, we've only got about 3 minutes left with you. Where can our listeners find out more about you? Where can they find out more about Spirit BC? The floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's obviously the spiritbc.net is our our paranormal investigation side of things, and it can be reached through that. Psychic readings by Richard.com. I do Skype readings. I have international clients. And then the other thing, I'm working on a really cool project these days. Created a new social media company called goes to11.ca, and it's a new social media thing for everybody to check out, where we're spotlighting really cool activities, events, hobbies, attractions, and unique products. So it's actually really cool. It's a whole separate gig from doing all the paranormal side of things, but you guys get to see sort of how I like to relax. I love fishing, so there's a lot of fishing content on there. People ask me all the time, do you do a lot of meditation? It's like, no, every time I meditate, that's work.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what was the address for the social media site again?
It is goes, GOESTO, and then 11.ca. So goes to 11. It's one more than a 10. All
right. Very cool. We're going to have to check that out.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much, for having me on here tonight. It's been great reconnecting with you. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has.
And then anybody, if you ever have any questions or anything that I can help you with, I'll gladly answer questions. If you have email that you want to send me, if you need some help or tips or whatever, I'd love to help you.
Certainly. Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch, and best of luck, with your investigations and your new social media site, and with your readings. Hopefully we've drummed up some business for you tonight, because I know people are like, "Ooh, psychic medium that does readings." Yes, I'm going to contact him. So, hopefully we were able to get you some business there.
Thank you so much. It's much appreciated, guys, and I wish you well in your investigations. I'd love to hear how they're going.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend.
All right, guys. Take care, and thanks again, everybody.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Good night.
So, Rick Pedersen, ladies and gentlemen, and on that note, we are going to take our final break of the evening, but when we come back, more with Joe and myself, so stay tuned. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Alabama. I am Clarissa Vasquez, and riding shotgun this evening is... I'm going to go ahead and say it. The sprinkles on my donut, Mr. Joe White.
How you doing, everybody?
That one always gets a good response. But I was trying to think of, I've been trying to think of different things to call you. And, so that I'm not always calling you the sprinkles on my donut. But,
well, that seems to be the most common one.
Well, I think that's the most popular one. That's the one that our listeners like to hear the most.
And the what is it? Spook what? What is it?
Oh, Mr. Benage's Spook.
Yeah, that one.
Yep. Yep. The man who can get a spectral lap dance. Mr. Benage's Spook. we got to thank Aubrey Baldwin for coining that one. She is genius when it comes to stuff like that. Well, that, and she just likes to pick on Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, she messaged me tonight, and she goes, "I'm trying to think of other things to call him."
Oh, jeez.
Like, you keep it up, girlfriend.
No, you've done enough.
What? Why would you say such a thing? Aubrey is great. No, we like Aubrey.
But what about Mr. Rick Pedersen? That was a great interview, huh?
Yes, it was. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. And so much so that we had him on the show, about 6 years ago. But we hadn't talked to him in forever, and so it was great, to get caught up and see what he's been up to. I mean, a new social media platform. Holy crap!
Yeah, 6 years too long, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm gonna definitely go and check out his new social media platform and see what that's all about. And for people that are into the strange and unusual, oh my gosh, definitely have to take a look at that.
Well, plus he said he has a lot of fishing stuff on there too, right?
Well, yeah, and how
you're
much I
into
like
fishing.
to fish. I love to fish. Yeah, can't eat them, but I can catch them and clean them till the cows come home. I totally can. I'm not afraid to do that either. And that was several years ago. My son was just little itty bitty thing, and I suppose I should send a happy birthday shout out to my offspring. He turns 18 on Monday, and my baby is all grown up now, but he was about 4, I guess, and I had been teaching him how to fish since he was able to sit up on his own. And
now he outfishes you.
Yes, he does. He outfishes me. But I had taken him and my 2 nieces fishing. And I had assumed that my brother was raising his daughters the same way that I was raising my son. And, that the girls knew how to fish, which was totally not the case. And my son ended up catching a fish. And so I went to clean it, and my nieces are screaming bloody murder, going, she's hurting the fish, she's hurting the fish, she's hurting the fish. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh, the drama, oh my gosh. And so I had to sit my brother down. I'm like, you need to teach these children how to fish. But instead he has decided that they needed to learn how to hunt. And so all of his kids own 22 rifles. And I'm like, I think that's a little excessive, but, not my children, not my choice. And so whereas, my child learned how to fish, his have learned how to hunt. And I suppose that is okay. But yeah, that afternoon, she's hurting the fish. She's hurting the fish. It was crazy.
How old were they at the time?
Let's see. If the offspring was 4, that would have made them 3 and 2. Yeah, the girls were 3 and 2. And so, she's hurting the fish.
Traumatic experience there, huh?
Right?
And it's all your fault. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Yes, I am the reason that my nieces now need therapy. No. Yeah, that was. I'm sure I told you, that story about the the pup tent, that my, at the time, stepfather had inflated an air mattress, a queen size air mattress, in, thinking he was being nice to me. And then it rained that night. And when you've got a pup tent that has been stretched to the gills with a queen size air mattress, it is no longer water resistant. And so it was raining on me, and I was stuck in this pup tent. And oh my gosh, it was hilarious. But especially, 6:00 in the morning, I hear my mother get up out of her tent, and I'm like, "Mom, let me out." And the tent was on an angle, and it had been raining, and there was so much air pressure and heat from me being in the tent, combined with all of the water and everything. Mom unzips the tent, and I go sliding out of the tent into the mud. I'm glad you think it's funny.
Yeah, because you probably had mud in places you shouldn't have mud.
Oh, yeah, I had mud in places I didn't know I could get mud. But that was an adventure. And, that's the last family camping trip we ever did. I wonder why. And so, I mean, it was a great time, and I've got, a lot of pictures and, and some good memories, but, listening to those girls squeal, she's killing the fish. Like, oh my gosh. Really? Yeah. Yeah. Come on, let's, if you guys want Grandma to eat this fish, you're gonna have to suck this one up. And so she's killing the fish. She's hurting the fish. And that was actually, the fish wouldn't die. It wasn't, I had totally taken its insides out, and it wasn't until I cut the head off, that it finally died. And I had my son holding a zipper bag, to put it in so that we could put it in the cooler so that my mother could eat it for breakfast, because that's what the kids wanted. They wanted Grandma to eat the fish. And as soon as I cut the fish's head off and and was ready to drop it in the bag, my son slipped, and the fish ended up going in the water, and it had to go for one last swim, as we say. And so then all three of the kids were crying, the fish! And so I go chasing this fish downstream. Had to wait for it to get to a wide spot, and I dive in, to catch the fish that wouldn't die, that had to go for one last swim, and all the kids are bawling, and I was so grouchy on that camping trip. It's funny now, but it sure wasn't at the time.
Oh, I would have been rolling.
Oh, I know you would have. I know you would have. And you'd have been calling everybody, going, "Guess what she did? Guess what just happened?" And yeah, I know that's what you would have been doing. You are not going to believe this. But no, we had a great show tonight with Mr. Rick Pedersen from Spirits BC, and be sure to visit his website, spiritbc.net, for more information on him. And next week, we're going to have Ronnie from Tennessee Paranormal joining us. And so that's going to be a really good show. We're excited to talk to Ronnie and learn more about Tennessee Paranormal, and what their mission and their objective is, and how they handle things that go bump in the night. It's going to be good, I think.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And of course, next week, I will probably have an update from this weekend's investigation. So be sure to tune in for that. And learn about all of the exciting adventures. Hopefully I don't have anybody crying and going, she's she's scaring the ghosts. Hopefully we don't have anything like that, but you never know.
Right.
That would be kind of funny, though, wouldn't it?
You scaring a ghost?
Yeah. You don't think that would be funny?
I'm actually thinking about it.
Uh-oh. Don't hurt yourself.
No, can you smell the smoke?
Now, I see the hamster running on the wheel. I think the hamster is about to have a stroke.
Yeah. Maybe.
So have my investigators will be calling you Saturday night. She scared the ghosts.
Yeah.
I can see them now. They would call you and tattle on me.
Well.
So there I was.
I'd be so jealous. I know that.
I know. You haven't investigated for a while, and I'm sure you've got the bug really bad.
Yeah. Investigation. I can't even talk. Investigation withdrawals.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can get a case lined up here pretty soon and can, go out and chase some things that go bump in the night here before too long. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. So we'll have to change your name to Will. Will White. You don't like that?
Will White.
Will White. Investigator extraordinaire.
Maybe.
Beats changing your name to Jose.
Who come up with that?
You did. You've told me a couple of times you were thinking about changing your name to Jose. That way I could say, no way, Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that idea.
Oh. No, what's interesting is that my grandfather's name was Joseph White as well.
Uh-huh.
Except he was Joseph Francis.
Ah. Yeah, you're not a Francis.
No.
If you were a Francis, then you'd kind of have the same name as my car. Because, I named my car Frank Sinatra.
Yes. And it's weird, too, because he had a brother. I guess back in the day, in the 40s, everyone was named Joseph or Mary.
Uh-huh.
So they all went by the middle name.
Uh-huh.
So, like, my grandfather had a brother. His name was also Joseph White, but his middle name was Eric.
Uh-huh.
So they called him Eric, and they called my grandfather Fran.
Okay. Very cool. Well, on that note, we are out of time. But be sure to tune in. Be sure to tune in next week when we have Ronnie from Tennessee Paranormal, and I will have updates from this weekend's investigation for everybody. So tune in 9 p.m. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. So for Joe, Kat, the WBHM family of hosts, and myself, we want to wish everyone a great evening, and may all of your ghosts be friendly.
Stay spooky, everybody. Have a good night.